December 13th, 2022, regular meeting of the City of Troy Planning Commission. Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available at the entrance to the room. Agendas and minutes of prior meetings are available on the city website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as presented or amended by the Planning Commission. State law establishes planning commissions. This planning commission is comprised of 9 residents appointed to serve our community. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by city council. Other individuals participating in the meeting tonight include the city attorney's office and our city planning consultant, Carlisle Wortman Associates. If you wish to address the planning commission, please come forward to the lectern when recognized and clearly print your name and address on the sign-in sheet. Please begin your remarks by stating your name for the benefit of the commissioners. All remarks are to be addressed to the planning commission and not to anyone else in the room. If you have a cell phone or any other device that might disrupt the meeting, please either switch it to the silent mode or turn it off. At this time, I'll ask the Planning Commission Recording Secretary, Kathy Zarnecki, to conduct the roll call.
Mr. Beekner?
Here.
Mr. Faison?
Here.
Mr. Hudson? Mr. Krent?
Here.
Mr. Lambert?
Here.
Ms. Malala Holly?
Here.
Ms. Parakis? Mr. Rahman?
Here.
Mr. Tagle?
Here.
Quorum present, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of the agenda, and we do need to make one addition to it, and that would be the setting the meeting dates for 2023. And also, 1 or 2 commissioners have asked, requested a consideration by the commission as to whether or not we want to handle all the items on the agenda tonight concerning whether we can give each item enough time. I do know I was informed by Mr. Carlisle that the first item, which is a special use approval, they've asked to have it postponed to our next meeting, so that'll be one less item on the agenda. I wanted to find out from the commissioners if they feel that we have enough time to cover adequately all the remaining items on the agenda.
Well, if it doesn't go beyond 11, I would cut it off. But, we do have work tomorrow.
Yep. Yes. So maybe, would it be appropriate, Ms. Dufresne, to amend the agenda to also include a requirement that we would conclude the meeting by 11 p.m.?
You want to have discussion about the time? I don't want 11 p.m. to seem arbitrary, and you need to establish at the beginning of this meeting what that means for what happens at, 10:59. Several, like the adding of the dates, that needs to get done tonight. So yes. I don't know if you want to have a discussion about what's a reasonable time for cutoff, and then also if you want to adjust the order of the items on the agenda so you can get to things that need to be considered tonight.
So, Ms. Malala Holly.
So I do have an objection to the time limit. In all honesty, when I looked at this agenda, I was one of the few individuals who did send out an email, because I don't think we can really look into each one of these applicants' proposals with due diligence and the manner that and the attention that it deserves. And frankly, if we do go based off of a time limit, chances are we don't know where we will be at that hour, and then we may be halfway through a proposal and in discussion, we can't stop it because we have set ourselves on a time limit. My personal thoughts here, I would like to only address today, did not know the special use approval was getting postponed, so I would like to just address 2 of the agenda items under this preliminary site plan review, because site plan reviews do take a lot of time, and planned unit development also does take a lot of time. And the second thing is, in all honesty, I could not get to page 128 and beyond that. I did not have the time to go through 405 pages of the agenda. I would like to spend more time on these proposals, and I would like to do my part on this commission, and I'm sure the applicants too would want us to be informed so that we can vote accordingly. So my suggestion, I would move to have only the preliminary site plan review, the two items, items 6 and 7, to be discussed along with our next year's calendar, which is attached in a different email by Mr. Savidant. And I don't know whether Mr. Savidant is going to be present in today's meeting, but I think his presence too is equally important to have all these items addressed today.
So your motion is to just cover, we actually have to open the public hearing for number 5, but that'll be dispensed with pretty quickly, but to just cover the two items 6 and 7 along with the calendar for next year. That's your motion?
That would be correct, Chair.
Is there a second to the motion? It's been seconded. Any discussion or questions coming up at this time? Mr. Krent?
My question would be, okay, so we cover those two, 6 and 7 thoroughly, and we feel that we have maybe, another hour before 11 or so. Can we go on to the next item until 11 or not? I mean, it's just a thought.
Well, no, we're setting the agenda. So if we remove those items from the agenda, we would.
We can't do it.
Right.
Okay, so it's do or die right now. Okay. Got it.
Mr. Faison.
Can if I may, as part of this discussion, the PUD, the Troy Village of Troy, that's been up several times. I know that there will be some changeover in this planning commission at the beginning of the year. I think it makes sense to go forward with that, with the Village of Troy PUD. This body is only a recommending body. It will get a public hearing in front of City Council after this body makes its recommendation. So I just think, given the number of times that Village of Troy has been up, I think it's time to move that item forward to City Council. But this is your agenda, so.
I agree with Ms. Dufresne.
Okay. Mr. Faison?
I was going to say, I agree with Ms. Malala Holly with not setting a time frame and just instead picking the items we should cover on the agenda. And if I heard Ms. Dufresne correct, she's suggesting that we add item 8,
Yes.
because we've seen that at least maybe twice before. And so I would agree with that as well, but with no time frame.
Yeah.
That we just
Would
cover.
the maker and seconder of the motion be willing to add in item 8 then to the agenda for tonight? So the only one we wouldn't cover would be item 9 tonight then.
That would be correct, yeah.
Is that okay with you, Mr.? Okay. All right, any further discussion? So if I understand correctly, we would approve the agenda as amended with adding at the end of the agenda, the meeting dates for 2023 and just postponing item 9 to our next meeting.
And item
Yes.
5 is being postponed.
Yes, Mr. Faison?
Item 5 is being postponed.
Yeah, that will be postponed too to the next meeting, so, all right. Yes, Mr. Biegner?
Ben, you okay with that?
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to do it. I would just say other communities that I work in oftentimes will say that they will not take up a new item past a certain time, so that allows them to get to a certain point. And so if it gets to 11 o'clock, you don't have a hard set, but you could say we won't take anything up after 10 o'clock. And that would be another way to consider doing it, so you work till you finish after something you started before 10 o'clock. But if the commission's comfortable with this, I understand item 9 is simply a concept plan only, and so we could bring that certainly back at the meeting in January as well.
Okay, Mrs. Zarnicki, do you understand what the motion is or not?
I believe I do, yes.
Okay, good.
Sure.
All right.
Okay,
Oh.
we're going to address number 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Plus adding the meeting dates for 2023, so.
Do you have a copy of the dates in front of you?
I think it was in a separate email that Mr. Savinant sent to us, so,
I did not get that email.
okay.
I'll get my hands on it.
All right, thank you. All right. Yes, Ms.
Did I hear Ms.
Malala.
Zarnicki correctly? Item 5, the applicant has requested postponement on that.
It's going to
So
be
that is-
postponed, but we have to open it.
We have to open
Yes.
the whole public hearing for that
Yes.
one, too. All right. All right, are we ready for a vote on the motion? All right.
Okay. Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala Holly?
Yes.
Mr. Rahman?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Biegner?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right. Next is approval of the minutes from both the October 25th and November 1st meeting. Does anyone have any corrections to either set of minutes? If not, would it be appropriate for us to approve those jointly, Ms. Dufresne?
I'd prefer separate motions, please.
Separate motions? Okay, who would like to make a motion to approve the October 25th meeting minutes?
I'll do it.
Mr. Krent and Mr. Tagle, first and second. So, any discussion? Mr. Krent moved, Mr. Tagle seconded it. Ready for the vote?
Ready? Okay. Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala Holly?
Yes.
Mr. Runman?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Biegner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, and someone like to make a motion to approve the November 1st meeting minutes?
I'll move.
Mr. Faison moves, Ms. Malala Holly seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're ready for the roll call.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala Holly?
Yes.
Mr. Rahman?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Biegner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is public comment for items that are not on the agenda tonight. Anyone wish to address the commission for items not on the agenda? Seeing none, then, we are ready for the first item on the agenda, which is a special use approval. I should probably just read that into the record, and then we'll postpone it after I open the public hearing. Yep. Okay. It's special use approval, which is special use approval and preliminary site plan review, file number SU JPLN 2022-0004, proposed 2690 Crooks Road Apartments, east side of Crooks, south of Big Beaver, 2690 Crooks, section 28, currently zoned BB Big Beaver District. This has been postponed to the first meeting after the first of the year, but we will open the public hearing to be in compliance with the appropriate law. So we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wish to address the commission on this item on the agenda? Seeing no takers, we will close the public hearing then. And that item now will be taken up at the next meeting in January. All right, next, we'll put Mr. Carlisle on the hot seat here. Preliminary site plan review, proposed 5920 Livernois Office Building, east side of Livernois, south of Square Lake, PIN 88-20-10-101-018, section 10, currently zoned O Office District. Mr. Carlisle.
Yes, thank you and good evening. The first item before you tonight is a proposed site plan for 5920 Livernois. It's a .34 acre site. It's located at the southeast corner of Livernois and Cutting Boulevard. As can be seen by the aerial above you, the site is currently vacant. It's currently zoned office, and the site's adjacent to single family on the south and east, a townhouse development across Livernois, and a medical office across Cutting Boulevard. The applicant's proposing a 5,000 square foot building for general office use. There's about 2,500 square feet for each floor. We do note there's no direct access to the site off of Livernois, and all access will be off of Cutting Boulevard. The first floor of the building is proposed for general office use, and the second floor is for storage associated with that office use. And again, we note that an office building is a permitted use in this district. One of the interesting items for this was the review of parking. Based on a 2,500 square foot first floor plan, the applicant would be required to provide 9 parking spaces. They are providing 14 parking spaces. So the site is overparked if you only account for parking of the first floor of office use. However, in conversation with the applicant, and they've got another building they built just down the road here, it's very similar to this. The second story is going to be associated storage for the first floor uses. They say that's a need in the market for extra storage for office uses. And so if we don't count the second floor towards parking and count it towards storage, the site is slightly, a little bit, but slightly overparked, but however, probably appropriate. So we are asking if the Planning Commission is comfortable with this arrangement, which we are at a staff level, that one of the conditions be that the second floor shall be dedicated storage use for the first floor uses only, and that would confirm that the parking is sufficient for the site. If at any time they want to come back and use that second story for another use, they come back to the Planning Commission and get reapproval or add more parking and get a reapproval from the Planning Commission. We also note that by ordinance they're required to have a loading space. There's no loading space shown on the site plan itself, and again, that is something that Planning Commission can waive and have waived that for office buildings of this size and nature. We note that the site meets landscaping requirements, except there are two parking spots located in the perimeter of the parking lot, and they're not located within the parking lot itself. The Planning Commission can grant that waiver to have parking lot trees outside the actual physical parking lot, and we do note that all photometric requirements have been met. The architecture is in front of you. The top elevations are those that'll be perhaps most visible. On the left upper corner is the frontage on Livernois. You can see there's a entrance there, as well as the elevation on Cutting. There's an entrance there, and then they've got the rear parking lot elevations as well. This is a view of the building from Cutting Boulevard. Again, those two entrances, one in the parking lot, one off of Cutting. And again, this is elevation looking kind of a bird's eye view down at the building. As the Planning Commission is aware, there are 3 standards that the Planning Commission reviews with regards to design standards: compatibility with existing commercial district and a transition between land uses, incorporate best architectural practices, and lastly, enhance the character and safety for pedestrians and motorists. As part of the deliberation, we conclude that the Planning Commission should discuss the condition of the second story shall remain storage for the first floor use only, allowance of waiving the loading space, allowance for parking lot trees that are located outside the parking lot, discussion on the architecture and material details, as well as discussion on compliance with the site plan standards that I just noted. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Carlisle? Yes, Mr. Faison.
So, Ben, just two questions. So I saw there was the calculation that you did for the required parking for the square footage. And that's how you got to the requirement. So I was just wondering, for other office buildings, do we back out storage space when we do that calculation for required parking, or is that a unique
This is unique.
for this
This is unique based on the condition the applicant has imposed essentially on themselves, saying that they're only going to dedicate the second story for storage space, for dedicated to the first floor uses. If this is a storage space for outside of the use of the first floor, so just general storage, we require parking for that. But because they have said this is only for the first floor users, we have allowed parking relief because of that reason.
That's one follow-up question.
Sure, go ahead.
And how do we enforce that? Are there inspections, or how would we validate over time that space is only used
So it'll
in
be
that manner?
two things. One, through the building department, through permits that are pulled for the first and second floor to confirm there's no improvements that would be normally associated for another use on the second floor. And 2, through the assessing office, where they would assess it and go through the building to confirm that the second use is storage only. Thirdly, if we ever recognize there's a parking problem out there, we would go out there and ensure what's going on too. So really 3 ways that we would verify it.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Malala Holly.
Thank you, Chairman. Couple questions for you, Mr. Carlisle. First, can you tell me the height of the building that sits right next to this particular proposed structure, which is an attorney's office, and it is pretty tall? I want a comparison of that building height to the building that is being proposed. And if I have missed it, please let me know what the current proposed building height is going to be.
The proposed height of the building is it's permitted up to 36 feet, and their proposed building is, I believe it's at 30 feet as we measure by zoning. But I don't know the height of the building adjacent to it. I can try to find that information for you. I don't have it at this current moment.
So my concern with this particular thing is I feel it is a pretty tall structure that will be sitting right opposite the other tall structure, which is the Livernois townhomes. I don't know the name of that, but those Livernois townhomes. So I'm a little concerned about the fact that we are going to have very tall structures sitting very close to each other, being that Livernois Road itself is just a 2-lane road at that at that area. So I'm a little concerned about the height and feel like it is going to be a very blocked area that we are talking about. I know it is a zone for office, but the height is something that I would want to take a look at in comparison to the attorney's office that sits just a few steps away from this proposed building.
Mr. Chair, may I address? One of the things that is important to note here, too, is there are, it's a very small parcel. It's only, 0.34 of an acre. There is an additional requirement that states that buildings in O districts have to be at least 50 feet from any residential property line. So in theory, where the applicant's putting the building is the only place on the site where this building could go. I think if they had their druthers, they may try to pull it back a little bit from Cutting and from Livernois. And to get a building of this size of 5,000 square feet, it has to be 2 stories and it has to be in that particular location. And so it could be a 1-story building, but it would have to be, it couldn't be any closer to the rear property line or the side property line here. It has to be in this particular location. And so I think for the reasons of the setback, that's why the applicant went to 2 stories rather than a larger 1-story building.
I understand. In order to seek and not seek a variance, the proposed suggestion of the building placement on that lot. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Carlisle? Just one quick one. It's kind of an unusual building from the point of view that the entrance itself, even though the building sits on Livernois, the entrance is on Cutting. Is it kind of out of the ordinary for a lot of the buildings in that area or for office buildings in general?
I think it's a little unusual. There's no requirement or ordinance that requires a building to front on the actual street, primary street. It does front on Cutting, which is the long side of the building, and there is an entrance off the parking lot as well. I think it's just a function and layout of the building itself.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Carlisle? If not, is the applicant here tonight? Come on up and I'm sure you can make a presentation to us. Make sure you sign in on the form there, and I'm sure some of the commissioners may have questions for you as well. Good evening.
Good evening, Area Nikolov, 5960 Livernois, Troy. I'm the applicant for this office building. Thanks for having me here tonight. I want to make a couple of quick clarifications. So with the office space in the past couple of years have been challenged and how we adapt to the COVID conditions. What we have found is that the small business owners, the attorneys, the accountants, the architects, they would like to have a smaller office space in a more of a flexible type of working space, like a nomad type of a condition, where we don't have an assigned office per se, but we have an assigned scheduler that assigns offices so there's no conflicts, but what we have is assigned storage spaces. And this is key for the success of the office space nowadays. We have to change with time. So the COVID has learned that we don't need these huge buildings, but we have to flex the office and how we use it. And this is the notion behind this. We've applied this notion, this layout in another municipality last year. It has been very successful, and we're trying to apply it here. This is why we have this storage on the 2nd floor, and this is where we come with this idea. I hope that's clear. As far as the location of the building, as it was mentioned, we don't want to get close to the residences. We have to be within 50 or at least minimum 50 feet setback from the west property line and also the south property line. The south property line is a 2-story building. The north property line, the south property line is a house, 2-story. On the east, I'm sorry, it's a house that's a 1-story building. We stay 50 feet away. We don't want to get any closer to them for that reason. Answering the question about the height of the building, as it relates to the office, it's the same height. It's the same height, even though as far as the height goes, but the roof pitch here is not as steep as that office building. It's a lower slope, if you know what I mean. Slope of the roof, it's lower. This is a hip design. So it's a 2-story versus 2-story. This roof is a little lower in the peak than of the office building, right north of it. Any questions?
Yes, Ms. Malala Holly, then Mr. Biegner.
So this is the closest intersection to where I live. So I have a little concern. Predating to my presence on this commission, the Livernois condominiums were built. I have a huge thing about that, but that's not the question. So we have a tall structure to our west of, as traveling south on Livernois, that is. So we have the tall structure there. We also have this attorney's building that is also sitting, very weird combination. There's also another building right next to it with a small alley in the thing. And then you have this cutting boulevard, and then you have your office building that is being proposed. The intersection will look, not exactly the intersection, but a little away from the intersection, looks like we are going to just tack these buildings. And it feels, for that small space of two-lane roads, I'm a little concerned about that. Second thing, yes, you mentioned 50 feet of space, the single-family home behind the proposed building that you have. Have you talked to them, and have you also talked to the other resident, the one-story home resident? Have you had a chance to talk to them about your proposal?
And this specific proposal, no, but we've met in the past with the owner to the east. They have known that an office building eventually will go there. In this site, there used to be an old fire station, if you know, and it's been vacant for a long time, and they have known that at some point something of this nature would come, office type building, not an apartment, not a condo, but an office building. In relation to the way the building will look in comparison to the other buildings right north of it, I don't have a view to show you, but this building, the lot property line, the west property line of this building sits almost 20 feet further back, because Livernois is open in that section. If you go right north of it, the property line, those properties are closer to the road than this building is. So if you can visualize this building, if you take a straight line, will be around 20 feet further away from Livernois than the building, the office building to the north, and the dentist. That's a one-story building. Because the reason why we do that, there's two reasons. One reason is this is an office zone, which has different setback requirements from a front on the road, versus the north was a node. And the node, it was always recommended to be as close to the road as possible back in the day, yeah? So that's one reason. The other reason is the lot, the way it's situated, is further to the east, the property line. And with those two in mind, this building is already set further back away from Livernois. It's not in a straight line as the other two.
True. On Cutting Boulevard, if you were traveling west on Cutting Boulevard, the first house that you approach after this vacant lot, they're going to be completely enclosed by your building, correct? From Livernois perspective, you're not going to be able to see those residences, that resident.
Actually, the house is further set back, so they will be able to see. There's a screening area with evergreens, and they should be able to see Livernois from there, because the house is further set back. Our office is closer to the road. Their house is further set back from Cuttings. But as I mentioned before, we have situated where we're allowed to put the building, and we've stayed within the norms that we had to work with.
Okay, may I ask one last question before? So the second story storage,
yes.
I'm a little not fully understood.
Yes.
How do you envision the interior space? So, because when I think storage, I'm thinking the commercial storage, and I know that's not what this is. Can you give a little bit of insight into that?
So there are sections on the second floor. There are open sections where we put file cabinets, large file cabinets, and also some shelving. There's two types of storage, open storage and enclosed storage. We're talking about paperwork. Mostly paperwork, books, literature, and some small equipment. For example, a surveyor that has a tripod may leave it out there. That's all it is. So normally we're targeting single business owners, an attorney, an architect, an accountant, maybe a surveyor, maybe a property manager, and they need dedicated space. So for example, you do not have to be in the office every day of the week. You go there when you have an appointment twice or 3 times a week. You go to the scheduler, you pick the times. So we have a scheduler that does the scheduling, so there's no more than 8 people at the same time on the office floor. because there's only a number of offices on the first floor. There's 12. We keep 8 offices, 4 conference rooms. So based on the schedule, they pick the open time, they go out there and do their business, they meet who they have to meet, they go upstairs, they use the storage if they need to use it, and they move on with their day. The idea is that you don't have the office space utilized only for the 8 tenants. You can utilize it for 10 or 12 or 15 as long as they're not there at the same time. With that, you leverage, because not everybody wants to work from home nowadays. They've gotten a little tired, they want fatigued, they want to go to the office, do their business, we're down with the kids, and then get it done and have their own ample space to do on the business. I don't know if I was clear. I tried.
No, I got you.
Trying to be flexible. It's called the flex
Yes.
office space.
Thank you. Appreciate
No problem.
all the explanation you provided.
No
Thanks.
problem.
Mr. Beekner.
Ms. Malala stole my first question of neighbors, so I'm curious if there's neighbors here to talk about it. The buffering to the neighbors of those evergreens you said?
Yes, so,
Arborvitae's, what
yes, I may clarify. Back in the day, it was a requirement that you have to put a concrete wall. Well, we are now allowed to do this. So some of the neighbors do not like concrete walls. And we're doing this. This is all arborvitae, evergreens, 6 foot, and they can go taller. And we'll maintain it. And our goal is to be in good standing with the neighbors. The neighbors have some shrubs right next to the street. Our intent is not to touch it, even during construction or after construction. We want to have the shrubs right on the entrance by their driveway. They have a bit of flowers and what have you. Our intent is not to touch it.
My next question, I count 17 parking spots there. It says 14. Am I missing something?
I apologize. This is a earlier rendition of a site plan that I had them fix. What ended up happening was we had some concern about these parking spots. These are actually removed, and so there's no park. This is a turnaround area, and the parking's down here. So I apologize for
The
that.
one next to the dumpster is not a parking spot because it's next to the dumpster?
No, that's a parking spot.
Then I count 15, but maybe I'm off. I'm not worried.
I think the revised one is 14, so they lose it. Because they had to add a handicap space, they lost a space on the bottom row.
Okay.
So
Do you have tenants, and I don't mean to get into your knickers, I'm just curious, because do you have tenants in mind, or?
Yes, there's 3 attorneys and there's a potential accountant that already inquired within, because we have another office, another municipality, and they've seen how we run it, and they live in Troy and they operate in Troy. So.
And office space is pretty open right now, so I'm curious if you're gonna help us provide a change going forward to have more office space
This is
options.
changing the mindset how you approach office space. There's a lot of buildings that are empty, and you know this.
I like that idea.
And we have to go with time and be more flexible in how we make it work. And this is a solution that people understand that, you know what, as long as I have my dedicated storage space where I leave my stuff, I can go there any day. I have my laptop or what I have my documents. I unlock it, go in there, do my business, and go home.
My last question, do you have an elevator?
No, we don't need an elevator because our main floor is the first floor. We don't, it's
Storage
people-
upstairs won't be too heavy?
No, it's only books and, files and what have you. Maybe a tripod or something. No problem.
Any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Cagle.
Couple questions. Are these offices dedicated, or if I come in and use office number 1 today, is someone else, and I don't need it tomorrow, does someone else come and could use the office?
Very good question. That is the notion of the nomad space. And a flexible office space is that you don't have an assigned office. You go into the scheduler, and you want to be in the office from 8 to 4 on Monday. And you go on that certain day, you see what offices are available, you select. We allow this once every week, Friday for the next week. You do your schedule, you go there. What you have is an assigned storage space, but not an assigned office. And this is how we can leverage more occupants. That's the idea behind it.
And just out of the curiosity, I think it was asked about your main entrance is on the side street and not facing the parking lot. That seems a little bit inconvenient for someone walking into the building that would either have to walk around to the end of the building, and I don't know who would ever enter the building off of Cutting. Why? Who would? Postman, maybe? I don't know.
So we it's how you optimize the interior use space as well, and we need to have a main door off of Cuttings. it's a requirement. You got to have a main door off of Cuttings or off of Livernois, either one of those main streets, yeah, main door. And then once you add another door on the other side of the floor, we thought of going to the north side, because that's where you have the closest to the parking, to the east side. You have the most parking to the east side, so you have two entryways. And the entrance to the east, you can also go to the staircase up to the storage. So that's how we
I
designed it.
understand that.
Yeah, that's how we designed it.
What I guess what's a little bit puzzling, and it has nothing to do with the site plan, but it just seems like this plan is very symmetric. It could be flipped. Now, is it, Mr. Carlisle, is it a requirement to have a door on
He's got-
Cutting?
One door has to face a public-facing right-of-way, and so it could either be Cutting or Livernois since it's a corner lot.
I mean, we could flip it. If you guys allow us, I wouldn't mind it. But we're kind of,
Well, in my opinion, it's a useless entrance. Nobody is going to come in that door. But,
we'd hope so. That they would use it.
Yeah, I hope so.
It would be used, because it's going to look nice once we finish it. So,
Thank you.
Sure.
One quick
Yeah,
question.
Mr. Krent?
Will there be an entrance door off the parking lot also?
Yeah, there is one to the east. To the east.
Okay, to the east side.
Yeah,
not-
east side.
Not that length.
So there's a sidewalk
Not the
that goes.
south side.
Yeah, there's a sidewalk that goes around the back of the building, the south of the building. So basically, the idea is that that sidewalk collects all the traffic to go to the door to the east. That's the idea behind it. There's two entrances.
Thanks.
No problem. Any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Faison.
Just a question on again, the shared offices, and I'm familiar with the concept, but I was curious about, is there shared support for the people that come in, for like servers and things like that?
Very good question. Yes, we do offer it. It's an option. They can choose their own. I mean, we'll get into the details of the technical, but they can choose their own, or we can provide it on site. We do have an assigned admin to the office building, and she's the one responsible to manage the overall schedule and.
So then your tenants can arguably just show up.
It's online, yes. And the admin is basically just to collect mainly the mail, any appointments that they have. She sees everybody, and she can sit everybody in the right place. More of a traffic controller.
Yeah, understand. Okay, thanks.
So, anything else?
Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Malahala.
Just one last question. Hypothetically speaking, if all offices were occupied for a meeting, short or long meetings, or in general, how many people would be present in the office space during that time?
So tenants, 8. There'll be 8 at any given time, maximum. But we kind of, we make them in a sequence such as, so let's say 8 people want to stay 2 days a week, there's 8 more people the other 2 days or 3 days a week. So our ideal occupancy would be around 15 tenants, 12 to 15 tenants ideally. So at any given time, the scheduler has a maximum number of tenants, 8. You have around 12 offices on the first floor, of which 8 are office spaces and 4 are conference rooms. In case you have to meet someone, you go to a conference room, a bigger area with more chairs and stuff.
So we have enough parking spaces in case
do.
there is a conference of 4 or 5 people?
You do, because what our admin does, in a sense that if you have a meeting with an outsider, she needs to know how many people are coming, and she makes the proper adjustments on a number of occupants on a given time during the day. So for example, if you want to meet with someone at 2 o'clock, and there's an occupancy of building 8, you can only have 3 more tenants in there for the meeting. Somebody else has a meeting, you can have it. 2 meetings, you have to schedule a different time. This is where the scheduling, the flexibility comes into play. As a person that manages all the scheduling around the office's space. So there's a quota. If you exceed it, you have to choose a different time. You block those times, so no more people can go in.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions for the applicant?
All right.
Seeing none, thank you for your presentation. This is not a public hearing, but we do want to hear from anyone who would like to address the commission on this issue. Is there anyone here in the audience that would like to address the commission on this particular item? Seeing no one approaching the lectern, then it's back to the commission for either a resolution or any further questions to Mr. Carlisle or Ms. Dufresne.
I'll put forth a resolution.
Go right ahead, Mr. Krent.
Resolved that preliminary site plan approval pursuant to Article 8 of the zoning ordinance as requested for the proposed office building located on the east side of Livernois, south of Square Lake, 5920 Livernois, Section 21, within the O Office District be granted, subject to the following. Number one, the second story shall remain storage for the first floor use and shall not be used for purposes that require parking. 2, the loading space is not required due to the proposed office use. 3, allowance for parking lot trees outside of the parking lot.
Is there a second to the motion? Mr. Rahman makes the second. Any discussion on the resolution? Mr. Tagle.
Mr. Carlisle, since the plans, the site plans that we have show the parking spaces at the west end of the parking, what is going to go in that? Is that going to be landscape? If they're not, are they going to continue to pave it?
I apologize. The plans in your packet should show what it is. It's really, it basically takes away the striping there, and it's backed out space. It's space that they can do a turnaround, so you can turn a truck around or turn a car around. You're speaking of this location here?
Right, yeah, I mean, yeah.
So basically, what the concern that we had raised initially by myself and the city engineer was the ability for these cars and these cars, there's conflict, and so he removed these two so these cars can back out here and pull away, or a truck could park here and turn around and pull away. So these is just open.
It'll remain.
It'll remain paved without any dedicated striping for parking.
Thanks.
Page 106 shows it. If you guys want to move to page 106.
Thank you. Ms. Malala Holly.
Just a clarification on what you just said, Mr. Carlisle. So there will not be a handicap spot there?
The handicap spot is located in this corner space.
I see. Thank you.
Any further discussion or questions? Seeing no further discussion, I guess we're ready for the roll call.
Mr. Chair, I want to make a note that the section 21 is the incorrect section on the proposed resolution, so I'm going to change it to section 10.
Perfect. Thank you.
That's okay.
Thank you for that correction.
Okay, Mr. Lambert,
Yes.
Ms. Malala Holly,
Yes?
Mr. Rahman,
Yes.
Mr. Tagle,
Yes?
Mr. Buechner,
Yes.
Mr. Faison,
Yes.
Mr. Krant,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. Congratulations. Next on the agenda is a preliminary site plan review for file number SP JPLN 2022-0025, the proposed Langview Townhouses, which is at the southeast corner of Livernois and Latonia, 4080 Livernois, Section 15, currently zoned NN Neighborhood Node, Node H District. Mr. Carlisle.
Yes. Thank you. A quick background. The subject site is located at the southeast corner of Livernois and Latonia, just north of Waddles Road. This site and its development should be familiar to the Planning Commission. You had seen this previously. The site is approximately 1.62 acres and is currently improved with a one-story office building that was renovated and added a new facade to that building. The property is zoned neighborhood node, and multifamily residential is a permitted use in the district. We do note that it is adjacent to single family to the northwest, north, and east, and neighborhood zoning to the southwest and south. The applicant proposes to incorporate 9 townhomes into the site, just north of the office building. This would front on Latonia. And again, I'd be on the north side of the office building. We do note that there's a third parcel here to the south. There's currently a tree in it. That is no future plans for development, and if it was developed, it would come back to the Planning Commission for further consideration. We note that all vehicular access to the site would remain off Livernois. The Planning Commission last reviewed the item on May 24th, 2022. At that meeting, there was discussion on lowering the building height by 1 story. The buildings that were proposed before were 3 stories. There was discussion about the amount of excess parking in relation to the zoning ordinance requirements. There was discussion, lengthy discussion on transitional features, especially in relation to the adjacent residential on Latonia. The discussion on the setback of the building to the east to avoid overshadowing, as well as there was some discussion on the potential development of the southernmost parcel. At that meeting, on a vote of 8-0, the application was denied because the Planning Commission found that the development did not meet the ordinance requirements with regards to transition. The applicant has revised and resubmitted their site plan and made the following changes. They've reduced the height from 34 feet 3 stories to 24 feet 2 stories. They've added 1 additional residential unit along Latonia. By adding that additional unit, they've eliminated the gap. There was 4 buildings, a gap in 4 buildings. Now it's just 9 buildings. So they've eliminated that gap and reduced the amount of overall open space by 3.2%. They've reduced the setback line along the eastern property line from 31 feet to a little over 30 feet. They've reduced the setback on Latonia from 20 feet to 17 feet. They've added 9 carport spaces along the eastern property line. They've added 1 parking lot tree, and we also note they have significantly revised the architectural style from the previous application. So these are the 2 site plans that are our consideration. This is the May one is the one that was denied. Again, 4 buildings, a break in between, and 4 buildings. The one that's being proposed is a 9-building unit with no break in between. The other significant difference is, again, these carports that are located along the property line. Other than that, in architectural style, it's pretty consistent with what was previously submitted, that and the reduction in height as well. As regards to elevation and height, it's not to scale, obviously, but this is a 3-story May 22nd, May 22 submittal with the architectural style. Again, this is a 2-story by ordinance. It's really 2.5-story because there's a slight mezzanine here. But again, it's a block of 9 buildings. This is a view of the site from, this is Latonia, and this is the view looking down. The townhomes will basically front on this elevation, fronting across from Latonia here. Again, the applicant has reduced the height to 2 stories by our ordinance definition. With regards to parking, we do note the site is slightly overparked. They are required 42 spaces. They're applying for 52 spaces, so they're over essentially 1 space under what we can approve. But it's up to the Planning Commission can grant a deviation from that 1 space. However, we do note that if this is approved, there would be a shared parking agreement because there is a shared parking between the office uses as well as the residential. The photometrics comply with all the ordinance requirements. There are going to be 4 pole-mounted fixtures. We do note that we've made this comment a number of times. There's a pole that seems to be put in the middle of the parking lot without any sort of protection around it. We think that pole should be either protected or moved to a better location within the site. Again, the elevations, again, these differ significantly from what the Planning Commission last reviewed at the last meeting. This is a rendering of the site from Latonia looking to the front of the buildings. With regards to standards, there are standards both on design and site plan review standards. One that we focus a lot is this issue of transitional that we spent a lot of time discussing, and there's really 4 components of that. With regards to architectural elements, site features, alterations, where the massing is used as a transition between higher intensity uses and lower moderate density residential uses. A continuing of use intensity where moderate intense uses are sited between higher density and lower density uses. Height massing, the building height and mass is a form of step backs, recessed lines, or other techniques, again, to provide compatibility and scale. The primary building facades shall be placed away from residential uses. And lastly, there are architectural features to reduce that idea of massing. So we recommend the Planning Commission discuss the proposed transitional feature as it relates to the 2 stories, but by adding an additional unit. The proposed changes to the architectural style, the relief for overall site parking, as well as the location of the parking lot light. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. And just one clarification before I turn over to the commissioners. As we had discussed earlier, your report said that they are deficient of 1 barrier-free parking and 1 bicycle spot. So if we do have a resolution of approval, those have to be added into the resolution?
Yeah, I apologize that wasn't caught in the resolution, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, any questions for Mr. Carlisle? Yes, Ms. Malahali.
So I have the same questions that I think we had earlier when this proposal came to us in May. So we are talking about this entire area that I see in our agenda packet on page 117, which is all colored or shaded with a red border line. The proposed townhomes or condominiums or apartments is sitting on Latonia Drive. What about the parcel that sits south of the existing building?
You're speaking of this parcel?
Yes.
At this point, it's owned by the applicant. There's no indication from us of what a future development of that would be. For now, it's going to be vacant, and if it is ever developed, it will come back to the Planning Commission through the site plan review process.
But when we are approving for all this area that has been highlighted in red, with not knowing what might sit on that particular parking lot or area, that space. Am I correct?
You're approving so the office building's been approved and is already complete. This is this building in this
Yes.
location. You're asked tonight to consider the townhouse development at this location.
Yes, but why is the southern pocket of that?
It's all one parcel. It's all one parcel. And so
But
we had
that
to highlight
does-
the entire thing.
But not knowing what is going to be built in that area, I don't know how I can approve of this as indicated. And this was the same issue that we had discussed. I very distinctly remember, because again, this is on the same road that I travel on 20,000 times a day. And I am not really happy with the fact that the Planning Commission Planning Department has brought to us the same thing that we had tried to look into the last time, with no idea what's going to come there, and this entire area being marked off in red.
It may never be developed. We don't know because the applicant does not indicate what their future plans are. As of now, they are not requesting approval to develop that portion of the parcel. It may remain vacant. We don't know at this time. What we are responding to and what the application in front of us is to develop the townhomes on the northern end of the site. If the southern parcel is developed, it would have to come back to the Planning Commission for your review, and it would have to meet all the requirements and standards that are in the ordinance, including parking, open space, transition, everything that we've talked about for this portion of the development on the north side of the site.
Any other questions? Mr. Rahman.
This is with respect to the elevation. So my question to you is there any aspect ratio that we have to maintain? It seems like the elevation is not compatible and kind of like a long school type elevation. So is there any aspect ratio that we go by, or any guidance
In terms of,
for the building massing, or
what do you mean by, I'm sorry, aspect ratio?
like a height of the building versus how long this building can be?
There's no ordinance requirement. There's discussion about massing in bulk and transition, but there's no requirement that says that you need to break up the building. A building can be no longer than a certain amount without a break. There's nothing in the ordinance that talks about that.
Because I don't think that elevation is compatible to the surrounding. I haven't seen this kind of building anywhere in Troy, So I would say maybe we should have a gap in between the two blocks. But obviously, it's good that they reduce the height.
Any other questions for Mr. Carlisle? Yes, Mr. Biegner.
Green space? They have enough green space there? With the property to the south, they probably do, but without the property to the south?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Definitely with the property south, they have the required amount of open space. But if, again, back to the point I was making earlier, if that's developed, they would have to ensure that they have enough open space for the entire site. And so it would maybe limit what could happen in the south portion anyways. But again, that would come back to the Planning Commission for future site plan for review. And we would ensure that the entire site is in compliance with regards to open space.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll invite the applicant to come forward and make sure you sign in on the sheet there, and I'm sure we have lots of questions for you.
I hope I have the answers. Once again, thank you. Been here before. Vince Pagnell, Strategic Property Services, the ownership of the project. To clarify on the landmass, that is, those are 3 separate lots. We own all 3 of those lots. The office building sits on one. The south lot is vacant at this time, continues to be vacant. Can be developed in the future, but would have to come back before the Community and Planning Commission for that approval. So we're just here for the townhouses tonight. Took into consideration what you guys had said to us last time with regards to height and the layouts. We've reduced our height substantially, taking floor out of it. We've reduced our parking by taking 2-stall garages and making them into 1-stall garages, and changed the elevations to more closely match what we think we have there. Than we have an office building, and we were trying to take off of some of that motif. I think we've hashed a lot of stuff around over the last meetings. I'm here really to answer questions, but just to describe to you what we've done to the project.
Any questions? I just have one.
Yes, sir.
The unique architectural style that you have is something that I haven't seen too often in Troy. Can you describe what thought process went into the peaked roofs on those units?
It's a little bit more cubic in design. We were using some of the similarities that the old post office had with some of the sharp edges. We want to employ materials like metals, and went through some of the stuff called longboard and masonry products. And it's a unique fit, unique feel, and I want to establish something a little bit different. I think it wears the test of times. I've seen similar examples. The most recent project done on Big Beaver Road, just to the east of, I think it's John R. with a new project. Something like that. That's kind of more modern looking.
Great. Any other questions? It's Malala.
In terms of the transitional features, I still am not convinced that your changed proposal fits into this particular area that we are looking into. I'm not convinced. I don't know the jagged roofs, that's how I would put it, but I know that's not how you would see it. And the way that structure will be sitting next to your current office building, and then the vacant space. I mean, there is a lot of up and down in the height that I don't see. I'm not envisioning this as a good transition. It is. We are able to get a good transitional feature out of this project.
The project was designed as a residential high-density project, and to get that kind of a component in there today, that's what you're going to get. The properties, the way you see the property right now is actually, there's a transition in the rooftops based on the building because of the transition of the property. So I'm really limited based on my boundaries and what I have there to develop and my costs. When you eliminated the floor out of the other facilities, those 8 buildings, you have to make that up someplace. I can make that up when I eliminated a garage and I eliminated the floor by additional unit. I want to try to maximize my property. I still could build probably an additional unit in there. However, my neighbors who I most directly affect are sitting here tonight. I've had numerous conversations with them, and I'm providing them with a 30-foot green belt there. I'm providing new stormwater system for the area, which includes all of my parking lots, all of the stormwater management that's not there today, which directly affects them. Excuse me. I've also been in discussions. They would like to see a masonry wall along that property line. I'm using green space. I've told them I'll do whatever they want me to do, but I would like the opportunity to discuss it with them because I don't like masonry walls. I like landscaping or a combination of the two. So I live in this community. I live in that, work in that building. I'm interested in what's going to be next to me because I'm going to be there for a long time.
Yes, I did hear you say that the last time you were there. But what caused you to think about that tapered, jagged?
It's unique. It's unique to the market. It's unique. You see it in other areas. It's just, it's a more modern look, and I think my building is more modern. I want that look in that area. Because my building looks like that, I want to take off of what I've already established there. I get lots of compliments on my building. all the time. I get people stop in and say, gosh, you've done a fabulous job with this whole post office. That's what I want to leverage off of that.
Thank you.
Mr. Beekner.
The buffer between, you just mentioned it, are you going to do, so it's either wall or arborvitae or something like that?
It's really up to my neighbors that are here tonight. I told them I'll do what they would like me to do there. Walls to me are just walls. I like to do, maybe you build a wall this height and you spread greenery, you do arborvitae, you do crabs, any number of different combinations of plantings. I prefer that to look at entirely up to them.
Okay.
They live there. I want them to be happy.
We were supposed to ask you about the light in the middle of the parking lot.
Well, one of the things that we have is an old DTE light right there, and I don't know if that got picked up in part of the Alta surveys, but of course, we'll figure it out.
What's your plan for that? What would you do with it?
For the light?
Yeah.
Hopefully I can get by with mounting it on as a pack light on the building instead of being in the parking lot. If it has to be in the parking lot, it has to be protected. The plows will take it down in a week. So I won't just it has to either be on a stanza, which I really would not like to do to bring up the elevation. So I'll have my engineers take a look at the photometric plans again, see if we can establish a better location for it so it's not seen.
Thank you.
Mr. Faison.
I have the same comments about the style of the buildings and the roof, and you've mentioned a couple of times it fits with the building you reskinned on the site. So, I mean, does that building, I go by there a lot, but I'm trying to visualize it. Does that building have a?
There's a wing wall, and if you look at the back of it, where I took it was the old post office.
Right.
So the back area where they built the loading dock on it actually has a wing wall, and it has very geometric design with the portico that I put off the front of it, or the covered walkway off the front of it, and the steel. If you notice the steel structures that I've used as accent elements to the building.
And it's slanted upwards. Like,
If you go around the back, if you go down Waddles, you can see it from Waddles. You'll notice I added transit windows along that area, and I call it the flying roof. It's a flying roof that jets off on an angle that has longboard underneath it.
and then when you build the townhomes or the homes, the materials will be? the
Of
color
similar
palettes,
use, yes, sir.
The materials will be consistent with the?
And consistent with the same, I'm really a big fan of that longboard product because it looks like wood, but it wears like iron because it's made of steel. So some of those glasses and things like that, yes, sir.
Thanks. I just, one question for Ben, the planning consultant. Do we have a requirement for a color rendering to see these things that the applicant is talking about?
Yeah, we have a requirement for, I believe it's a color running. It's definitely, and also it's a 3D model to show it in context as well, yes.
Is that in this packet?
You brought a color rendering. I know there's this, Mr. Faison.
But that not in the context of the whole site with the other building?
Oh, you mean combination of the two buildings together?
Correct, because you said it's one parcel, right?
Yeah, we use the same similar dark browns and grays and whites not as much white with our buildings. And I think that's subject to interpretation from us. That's as to how we want to end up doing it. But I'm not necessarily in agreement with the gray. The architecture design in that, we have some input into what the colors are going to be. But I'm intent to keep it in the same design character.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Rahman.
Well, I know, thank you for lowering the building height. I appreciate that, but still I'm really, it's difficult for me to kind of have this kind of building like, it's like a wall on that road, Lithonia Road. Mm-hmm. And also it looks like a factory type. I don't want to hurt your feeling. I know it's a modernistic, but if you look on the other side or opposite side, those are residential houses. So I would say, if we can divide it, make some space, so make it like 8 instead of 9, and then maybe change the architecture a little bit, at least divide it and say all this slanted. I know we have an architect here, so we probably will get some feedback from also, but I just want to make sure that there is some variation in the slants. Obviously, one problem is the long building, right? That's a big problem because that would look like a wall. if I'm traveling on Livernois Road.
Yeah, but there'll be a
Yeah.
deviation of the building.
But then it's like a factory building, right? You have like all, this should look like a factory building.
I guess that's interpretation, that's
Yeah.
personal interpretation.
But then I know it's a choice, but then compatibility standpoint, that's something we have to look into, right?
Understand that.
Because, it doesn't go with the other three buildings. So that's why I'm thinking that maybe your previous design with a shorter height would be maybe more appropriate. That's my one.
Right, but
feedback.
this is a transition point. That's the whole, you establish a neighborhood known in this community to transition these properties into the development cycle instead of not being in the development cycle. That's what I intend to do with this project, and I'm trying to keep it within the character of what I'm doing. If I'm going to match the two projects
Bigger
together.
road on a bigger scale with a lot of space in front, it would look probably very nice. But we are in a residential area where all other places are. I know it's a neighborhood node, I understand.
It's commercial to the south of the property. I understand the component of residential on it, but I'm being boxed into a corner on a piece of property that I'm not being able to develop.
Yeah.
And as a developer today, I think you appreciate the fact that, if I went out and built everything everybody wanted, and take into consideration the costs or where the dollars come from, then I'm not going to be in business very long. So that has to come into the component of the economics of the transaction also.
Any other questions for the applicant? Yes, Mr. Tagle.
Well, you've heard some of the concerns, one of them being I guess, the flatness or the length of the elevation on Latonia. There may be some opportunities to keep 9 units, but to offset the face. Step the faces in and out. I think that could break up the massing a little bit and start to take over or overcome that long, flat elevation just by offsetting them. It appeared on your site plan that you've got enough room to do that with a 10-foot setback. I think the buildings are 17 and a half feet back from the property line. So, I wouldn't say taking them all away, but I think some type of an offset would help change that flatness a little bit or take that away.
And we did, because there's kind of two fronts to these buildings. I don't know if anybody really looked at it from that standpoint. There really is two fronts. And I did that on the rear of the facility. So we maintain a comprehensive development between the two buildings because we share access, we share stormwater, we share a lot of elements to this project between the two buildings. And eventually, the third parcel. The whole project is to be developed as an integrated piece of property that shares in parking, stormwater, access. If you go and develop all 3 sites independently, each one of them gets a curb cut. This way I can develop 3 pieces of property and I get 2 curb cuts. I can develop 3 pieces of property, put a master storm system in, take care of a stormwater problem. Because my neighbor's got a stormwater problem. Everything flows down there. So in any one development today, I get it, it isn't perfect. It just isn't perfect. But based on what I have to work with, I'm trying to make it as perfect as I can, plus give something back to the community. Tax dollars, stormwater. I don't know if I could adjust the fronts without it impacting my neighbors, because I think my neighbors...
Absolutely. I mean, you'd made a comment that you offset the back, and I'm looking at your floor plan. There's no offset in the back.
The way that as you walk in by the garage, and there'll be a patio area back in there, and walk in the walkway, I have to go back to the engineer and the architect to get that differential.
Okay, this drawing that I'm looking at indicates the back door or the door on the south face is flush with the wall. There's no exterior.
What you want me to do is you want me to
take the
break
units,
up the buildings and
take the units and offset them.
Yeah.
I give you commitment to look at. My concern when you start to do that is how do you impact my ingress and egress to the back of the house?
I don't understand how you would, why would that be an issue?
As you push it back, then you push yourself back.
No, you don't push anything, you push them to the north.
Push it
You
forward?
leave your back elevation where it is, and then you take, let's say, every other unit and you push it north. So you're not pushing south at all, you're pushing the building elements north. Because that's where you've got your ability to do that, because of the amount of area you have that is in front of the setback.
Is there any concern related to the planning commission and the community about how far I get to the road relative to the residential that's behind me? Am I going to drag my building too far close to the road that it's going to impact is it going to change the look of the rest of the road?
When I'm talking
one of the
about offset,
concerns.
I'm talking about 5 feet.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not
I
talking about, totally taking it to the setback. I'm talking about, offsetting at 5 feet, just so you break up the flatness of the elevation.
And I'm prepared to do that. I think there's a couple of different ways to do that, by not sliding buildings, but also putting different, or extending features, to call it features. I can go back and talk to the engineers and the architects. I got more concerns about moving buildings than I do about putting things on front of buildings or giving some relief to the front through architectural elements. So maybe we're going after the same goal without moving a footprint.
Yeah, I mean, the goal is to remove the flatness.
Okay.
I'm not saying there are not other options to do that. I know for sure the sliding of the buildings would work. Without knowing what other thoughts the architect may have, that may work as well.
And the architect has some elements, or the architect has some say in it, but the engineer has a lot to say with it too, as to how it modifies his footprint. Where's connections are, utilities, there's other roadways, curbs.
Well, the elements we're looking at are architectural elements. It's the design of the building. I don't care about the engineering. The engineers will get the pipes to where they got to get. Not that I'm downplaying, they're an important part of the team. The other thing I wanted to ask you, you'd mentioned longboard.
Yes, sir.
Is that what you're going to use for the siding?
That's what portions of it as accents. I don't think you want to do the whole building in longboard, but I would like to do portions of the building.
Okay, the elevations and the renderings, it looks like there's brick up to a certain height, and then siding, vertical siding from that.
Which is a longboard, which is that vertical siding.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm familiar with the longboard.
Oh, you are, okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to know that there's only two elements other than your trim, your eave trim and such. There's the brick and there's siding. And I just wanted to confirm that your intent for the siding is a longboard product as opposed to something else.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's because we've incorporated that into our other building. I'm trying to pick up elements from my other building.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Malala.
I probably know the answer to this question, but I'm still going to go ahead and ask you. What do you envision that last bit of parcel what do you envision might come up, or what are you thinking?
Well, the south parcel?
Yes.
I really envision that as being what I would consider a high-image professional office. It won't handle more than about, I think when we did the first schematics, just looking at land masses and green, taking into consideration how much open space and trying to lay out parcels of the property, can handle about a 4,000-foot building, which is about half the size of the building that's sitting there right now, and work. So that's really what I think ends up falling there. It's fairly highly restricted. Can't do drive-through. There's a whole lot of things you can't do.
So like an office building?
Great dentist office, great doctor's office, something like that. Yeah, exactly.
And what do you envision? And I know this is all hypothetical question, but what do you envision? Is it going to be taller than the current building that is sitting right now? Because that's a one-story building.
Gosh, I have no idea. Well, 2 stories won't work. So it has to be a one, because it won't park. Where those guys where that last plan we looked at, well, this property is much bigger. But, and I'm not here to tell people, that piece has to come back to you. When I decide what we're going to do with that piece, then I'll be back in front of you, asking for another approval.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to first thank you for coming back with a plan that was lowering the height, so it's more of a transition, and I appreciate you also working with your neighbor to the immediate east. Kind of as a follow-up to both Mr. Rahman and Mr. Tagle, is as an alternative, and maybe Mr. Tagle's alternative might be more appealing to you, but to take out one of those buildings in the middle as it was before and have 4 on each side, so you'd go down to 8 units instead of 9 units. Is that something you'd be willing to look at, or would you prefer Mr. Tagle's alternative of
Tagle's alternative.
Okay, all right.
In the deal. And I don't have a problem in providing some additional elevations when I sit down with, because Gary and I have been jointly working on this project together. Gary couldn't be here tonight, so I want to chat with Gary because this is Gary's architect. I have no problem in implementing that kind of a program to give some relief to the front. I don't want it to look like a factory. I want you to be happy like I'm going to be happy with it, but I also want to keep in people's mind what I'm looking for is to integrate it as a part of what I've already, invested in there.
Okay, great, thank you. Mr. Krantz?
Just a quick comment. I agree with Mr. Tagle. I think you've got to change the front as far as making it not such a linear building, move them in and out to create some interest in that. It just looks too rubber stamped one after another. And, I know the comment was mentioned about factories. Back in the 1920s, a lot of factories had that shed roof for getting light into the factory because they didn't have all the fluorescent lights and other more efficient lighting we have today. So it does, some people that remember or know of those buildings, it immediately strikes that to their brain.
It is. You're right on. Exactly.
Yeah, but as far as the housing, we had the shed roof style back in the 70s, some in the 60s, and that was a very common style where you sort of like a half of a gable roof. But anyhow, it just create a little more interest than just a repetition rubber stamp and, break it up, make it look more
curb appeal. You want a little more curb appeal.
Yeah.
From that
Make it look a little
standpoint.
more.
I don't have any problem in doing that. I really don't have any problem in doing
good,
that.
because it should feel like home.
I agree with you. I agree
Okay.
100%.
That's all my comments.
Thank you.
Mr. Tagle?
Just a follow-up on that conversation. The way these roofs are configured right now, you do have an opportunity to put some clear story windows up there, which would bring in some natural light, high natural light in that upper floor area,
Yeah.
which I think would be quite a selling point.
I would agree too.
Yeah.
100%. I see that design. I picked up that design from travel, and I see that the coming back in a lot of different areas.
Yeah, it would be a nice to look out and look at the sky, get that outdoor look.
Absolutely.
There.
Yeah, that was kind of the whole thought process in that whole design. So.
Any more questions for the applicant? Seeing none, go ahead, Mr. Faison. It's okay.
One more. So when I look at the rendering, it looks like the buildings are all going to be identical. Is that right?
Except that you've made a request that we give us some curb appeal so we can do some curb appeal.
Right.
I'll do that.
So then my question is, do we require different elevations like that ABC for a product?
Not for multifamily, we do not.
Okay, thank you.
It's only for single family, Mr. Faison.
All right. Thank you. Great. That answers my question.
All right, thank you very much. And
Thank you very much.
this is not a public hearing, but we will open up the opportunity for anyone that would like to address the commission on this item. I don't know if your immediate neighbor wants to talk to us, or you're welcome to address the commission if you'd like to. Yeah, come on up, and make sure you sign in when you come on up. Good evening.
So while he's writing, thank you everyone for us to have an opportunity to express our concerns.
You may want to move a little closer to the mic if you can there. There you go. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, well, I want to thank Vince, the applicant, for being open and transparent with us about what he's trying to do. He actually gave us the materials, the structure, design to us yesterday. I just did not have a chance to look at that. This style is, I just saw this style. I think it's very, very unique. It doesn't go well with the buildings in the area. It's very unique. It will take me some time. I totally agree. It feels like it's a assembly building, like a manufacturing building. The second concern that I have is we are currently the first house in the corner. So there were 3 buildings built 2 or 3 years ago, and the front of our 4 houses, even the house to the east, the distance from Latonia to the front of our house is consistent. But my understanding is these houses, they're going to be much closer to Latonia. It's just weird. Feels weird.
Did you have something you wanted to add to the?
And any others?
I told Vince that we really would like to have a wall, not a 2 feet tall, high wall, I think a minimum 6 feet, to block noise. We will have, 8 or 9 houses added to the area, so it will be nice. And definitely a wall between the parking lot where, the business building or commercial building, adjacent to my backyard. And we do need a wall for that. And another thing is the drainage. As of now, all the drainage, all the water just go to my backyard, and my backyard is a mess. It's a total mess. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I would say Vince, when he moved in, I think he's a good neighbor, very nice contacting with us, being open communication. So the concern, my wife told you all our concern, so I don't really have others. One is the wall, one is the drainage. I believe when he starts the project, it's a good opportunity for him to take care of the drainage. Yeah, so make it better. Yeah, the drainage issue is especially associated with the office building right now. That's in the middle. And that's not his fault, but it was like that before he moved in. So, but I want to say drainage, absolutely. If you guys move on with this project, make sure that can be addressed formally. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lambert, are we allowed to ask him questions?
Well, we normally don't, so
Okay, that's fine.
thank you for your time.
Can I ask you a question?
You surely can.
I did not get which is their property.
They're immediately to the east of his property, the first house.
Okay, got it.
Mr. Tagle.
Question for Mr. Carlisle. Do you know what does the setback change on that side street off, the property that we're talking about, and then it goes to residential property, is it considered both a front yard setback? Because I looked at a site plan and it looked like there was a 10-foot required setback off of Lithonia.
Correct.
What is the setback for the properties east of that, the residentials? Is it also 10?
No, it's a different, it's residentially
Okay.
zoned, so it's a
All right,
much
so there
larger
is a
setback.
reason.
Yes. So because it's a corner parcel in a neighborhood node, they're required to be 10 feet on both Latonia as well as Livernois, and so that's why the building is placed where it is. The Planning Commission has the ability to move that up to 30 feet back, but you can't go any farther back than 30, and you can't go any closer than 10.
Gotcha.
So that's why the building is so close to Latonia there, based on the ordinance requirements.
Thank you.
All right, it's back to the hands of the commission. Before I do that, anybody else that would like to speak to the commission? I don't believe so. All right, any proposed resolution or questions for our planning consultant or our assistant city attorney?
I need a
Yes.
clarification, and I'm sorry. How far away from the Latonia Street is this building going to be sitting, Mr. Carlisle? Sorry, I am asking you probably a question that was asked before.
I heard 17 feet.
17, yeah, so it's 11 feet from Livernois, so this distance is approximately 11 feet, and it's 17 feet this distance.
Do you happen to know the single-family homes that sit, how far back they sit from Latonia Street?
It's obviously quite a bit more, right?
There-
30
yeah,
30 to
there-
40 feet? What,
I believe it's either a 25 or 30-foot minimum front yard setback for that district.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you one more question, and that is the Livernois and Square Lake townhomes. Do you know how far back they sit from the street, from Livernois, that is?
Livernois and Square Lake.
Yeah.
Which one? They would be between 10 and 30 because they're under the same zoning designation. I don't know the exact setback distance, but they'd be in that 10 to 30 range.
And the John Arden Square Lake one, do you know how much that is?
John Arden Square Lake.
Again, the zoning, anything built in the form-based district, whether it's neighborhood node, Big Beaver, Maple Road, et cetera, has the minimum build-to line is 10 feet. Planning Commission can go up to 30 feet if there's elements in between that 10 and 30. So those buildings under that district, under that would be either built in between that 10 to 30-foot range.
I understand, and there is, for a non-spatial thinker like me, it is, I want to keep those properties in mind as I envision the 17 feet from Latonia. That's where my question direction was going. But anyway, thank you. I appreciate your clarification.
Mr. Beekner.
from the setback standpoint, I think that's pretty standard. We've already hit that one. So I feel pretty good about that. I'm good for the moment. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Any other questions or proposed resolutions? Mr. Tate.
I guess I'd like to just get some feedback. I mean, I'm getting personally, I'd like to see, postpone this and actually see some renderings of context and of whatever adjustments the developer wants to make to this facade along Latonia. But again, I think that's important enough for us to ask him to come back with that information.
I would say in light of his willingness to work with us on doing the different adjustments, that would probably be a good idea. So if you want.
1 second, Mr. Tate.
Would you like to make that as a motion?
All right. Be it resolved that the preliminary site plan approval pursuant to Article 8 of the zoning ordinance as requested for the proposed Langview townhouses, 9 units located on the southeast corner of Livernois and Latonia, 4080 Livernois, Section 15, zoned NN Neighborhood Node H District, be postponed so that the applicant can return with 3D modeling to show the context of the building with the surrounding buildings and appropriate materials shown that they're proposing to use. I don't know if there was anything else that we wanted to include.
You mentioned that there's some change, design change.
Right, yeah, I mean, okay, yeah, that the revised design would take away the flatness of the face, the long elevations of the building. And I don't want to necessarily dictate how they do that, but that's up to them.
Mm-hmm. Did we want to include also the wall between his property and the adjoining property owner to the east? Or do we want to wait till that comes back?
Would that show up? I mean, right now, we're asking him to come back. Well, I guess we could add that. I mean, that could be part of the contextual element of how it sits against the house. And also show the screen wall that would be between the residential property to the east and the property in question.
All right. Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Mr. Krent. Any discussion on the motion to postpone? Seeing none, Ms. Zarnicki, we're ready for the roll call.
Ms. Malala-Holly?
Yes?
Mr. Runman?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes?
Is that a yes, Mr.?
Yes, yes.
Mr. Beekner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. We'll see you in January. Thank you. All right, next is planned unit development, file number PUD 019, JPLN 2022-0013, the proposed Village of Troy PUD, south side of Long Lake, west of Rochester, which includes parcels 88-20-15-201-046 and 88-20-15-201-033, Section 15, currently zoned RT 1 family attached residential, R1C 1 family residential, and CB Community Business District. Mr. Carlisle. Oh, yes, Mr. Tagle.
If I may, before
Yes.
we start, this, as I advised the commission last time this came in front of us, our office is currently working for Robertson on a project that has no relationship to this project. I want to give everybody the opportunity, if they feel that I can be unbiased in this petition, so.
Thank you for learning this. Last time it came up, I don't think anyone had an issue, and I don't think anyone has an issue tonight, but thank you for the transparency. Mr. Carlisle.
Yes, thank you. Tonight before you is a proposed PUD. It's located on the west side of the southwest corner of Long Lake in Rochester. The Planning Commission has seen this multiple times. I believe is very familiar with the site. The site is 20 acres in area. It's currently vacant. The applicant is seeking a PUD for a proposed mixed residential housing type development. The site plan includes 146 new for sale units. 20 of those are detached homes that would be accessed directly off Long Lake. 56 are attached to single-family, two-story homes, and then there are proposed 70 attached townhomes that are 3 stories. Access to the site is off of Long Lake Road as well as Rochester Road. The zoning for the site includes 3 different zoning designations. RT, which is a residential attached zoning designation, R1C, which is a single-family zoning designation, and CB, which is a commercial business designation. They seek to rezone the entire site to allow for this mixed housing type development. Under the current zoning, the applicant would be able to construct single-family homes, townhomes, and attached homes. The applicant, again, is seeking this flexibility through the PUD process to have 3-story townhomes to screen the existing IB property to the south, a slight increase in density and allowance for townhome portions on the site currently zoned R1C. The master plan for the site is designated as single-family residential, but we do note that it borders the neighborhood node as well as portions of it are zoned Rochester Road as well. The Planning Commission reviewed this project on September 13th. At that time, there's lengthy discussion on public open space, liability, activity schedules, et cetera, the orientations of the home, access drive, and the centrally located terminus drives, screening on both the north and south sides, landscaping, berms, fencing, et cetera, stormwater management and the proposed regional pond, parking and the formula used to factor the required number of spaces in consideration of land bank spaces, building material, color, cost, maintenance, et cetera. The board had a strong objection to vinyl siding, the potential to create additional pedestrian connections, the establishment of a homeowner association, as well as the PUD standards. The applicant took all of that into consideration and submitted a revised site plan, which includes the following. The first thing they did is they moved the EVA to directly connect to Long Lake. It's, if I get my mouse, it's right here, so it directly connects to Long Lake. They moved the dedicated pedestrian connection between the detached single-family homes to the attached single-family homes. It's in this location here. They redesigned the hill at the southwest corner to provide a more year-round amenity. They added traffic calming measures into the development. They've added additional pedestrian crossings within the development. They've enhanced the landscaping and screen along Long Lake. They enhanced the pocket park at the terminus of the private drive off the road off Long Lake, as well as they've enhanced the material selection, and they have the material board in front of you tonight. These are the two site plans in front of you. It's hard to really tell much of a difference here just looking at these two, but again, some changes to access, some changes to the connection, as well as proposed changes to the hill as requested by the Planning Commission. There are 18 standards for the Planning Commission to consider with regards to the PUD. I didn't list all 18 standards, but I listed those that are relevant. Includes consistency with the master plan, public improvement or public facility which will enhance or add existing public facilities, a recognizable and material benefit to the ultimate user of the project, long-term protection of open space and natural resources, a compatible mixture of open space, landscape areas, and pedestrian amenities, design features such as green building and low impact, which will promote energy conservation and sustainable development, and innovative and creative site and building designs is lastly consistency with the master plan. Based on that note, we are asking the Planning Commission to consider, has the applicant sufficiently redesigned or improved the plan to address the comments from the last Planning Commission meeting as well as public comments? Has the applicant met the site plan standards? Has the applicant met the PUD standards? And lastly, has the applicant presented a project where the benefits are commensurate with the requests or deviations? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to note that Mr. Deering from OHM, who's the traffic engineer for the city, is here to answer any questions. It's been a long night, so I think we should try to make sure he participates in the meeting.
All right, any questions from Mr. Carlisle? Would this be an appropriate time for Mr. Deering to come up, or do you want to hear
I know the applicant also has a presentation, so I don't know if you want to wait.
All right, we'll do the applicant first, and Mr. Deering will call on him, so, unless he's in a hurry to get home. Good evening.
Hello again. How are you all?
Good.
Ben, can you put that on full screen, please?
I'm sorry?
Can you put that on full screen, please? I think it's under view. I know.
I don't know how.
There you go.
Thought I had it on full view.
It was.
Under view on the top, maybe?
I don't know, Tim.
Under view on the top left?
Full screen mode.
Yeah, toward the bottom there, full screen.
Going down. One more. Keep going.
One more. Thank you. Appreciate it. Well, thank you again. Good evening. Tim Lockman with Robertson Homes, 6905 Telegraph Road, Bloomfield Hills. Great to see you all again. Hopefully, I have something that will meet your expectations for the site, which we think is a very important location, and we're very excited about what we're proposing. I think I can. Does this work or no?
I'll just move you forward.
Okay. Thank you. So I do want to say I appreciate staying on the agenda tonight. I'll be quick as I can. I really want to just focus on the changes from the last time that I was in front of you, because I think we got a lot of good feedback. In fact, we made some, maybe not wholesale changes, but I think a lot of little things that really add up to really good plan, really great plan. Things that we didn't even think of, and then we were saying, well, yeah, this definitely makes sense. So I'm very excited to walk through that with you. Ben went through a couple of these. I'll go quick. We did move that emergency vehicle access to Long Lake Road. We had a discussion with OHM and with the county. They don't have any issues with what we're proposing. The reason we did that is because we wanted to have a dedicated pedestrian pathway between the single family and the attached two-story single family. So that was the purpose why we did that, which I think makes it a much more kind of cohesive pedestrian access. We did actually change the hill area quite a bit. It's more of an all-year amenity. We think it's very important. We've got a pedestrian path that would be open to the public, that they could access that hill, which I think is a very cool amenity, and it's right off that public path. So we just think that that's something that's really special about this project. Has some outdoor activity space. Of course, that pathway connection, which is, I think, very important from what we know to the city of Troy. A scenic wetland overlook. I've got a picture of that, which I think is really cool. That's something that's really important to us. And we've added a dog park, so kind of made use of that space, which was kind of just dead space before, so something that's really interesting. And we did actually reconfigure the parking area to have less impervious surface, so it just worked out, I think, better all the way around. We added traffic calming techniques, and we didn't even think of it as being a cut-through road until you had all mentioned that. So that's something that I'm glad we were able to add to the plan, because it will definitely slow vehicles through the neighborhood. We've added the detail for the landscaping and the wall along Long Lake Road. That was something you had asked us, so we wanted to provide that detail to you. We've enhanced it quite a bit, and I've got a detail to show you for that. We have multiple pedestrian crossings. That's something that you had mentioned as well. And then, if you recall, there was discussion about on the terminus of that main road coming in on the single family. We've created, I think, a very interesting park feature that, again, is right off that pathway, and that's more of a focal garden feature, which we think is really cool. So, and then, of course, we have all the many different pocket parks throughout the whole site. So we can go to the next slide, please. Just going to show you a couple perspective drawings. So this is the main entrance off of Long Lake Road. We've enhanced that. It's a little hard to see on there. Hopefully you can see it on your screens a little bit more, but what we did was we enhanced that quite a bit with brick, with stone, a really nice, attractive, I think stately kind of look for our entrance. This is our main entrance coming off of Long Lake Road. And then you can see all the landscaping. We use a very good landscape architect who I think did a great job here. So that's our main entrance, entry focal, if you will. Ben, if you can move to the next. And then coming down that road, again, this is that focal point. Again, a little difficult to see, but I did a blow up of it on the bottom there. So that's what you're going to see as you're coming down that road. And what we really tried to do throughout this whole community is add focal open space landscaped areas as you're driving down the street. That was something we consciously did from the start. So we didn't have anything here, and this is something that you had recommended. So we took this right away and said we need something here. So what we've created is kind of a focal garden feature, if you will, planter area as you're coming down. Again, this is right off the walkway, the pathway, the public pathway, I should say. So next slide, please, Ben. This is as you come a little bit farther, start heading to the east, looking into the townhome section. That's very difficult to see, but we're proposing a fountain feature there. And again, this is interesting because that's what you're going to see as you're coming down another street. So, we've got all these kind of planned areas, if you will, that create those focal terminus points for us. So, and this one is more of a community green. This is larger. Again, this is off the pedestrian, the main pathway. And it's just an area that creates a lot of green space. I think before this really didn't read very well. It didn't look very usable. We've got a community green area with this kind of seated fountain, which is really, really usable and directly accessible now. Next slide, please. And then this is that hillside area. So this is looking to the southwest. Again, it's not a sledding hill. So, we heard that, and we think you can't really see the pathway in there, but there is a pathway that's on the north side of the hill. And then, of course, the dog park, as I mentioned as well. I think it's a 10-foot path. That's the pedestrian path. That is connecting. That's going to link basically eventually all of Troy's pathways. So this has been a focus, as you know, because you've seen me speak a few times. This has been a real focus of this project and something that we've designed around from the very beginning. So we're creating some of these usable open space areas that are kind of on the beaten path, if you will, for residents and others alike to use. And of course, that's the parking area. I think we've got 13 parking spaces in there as well. This is a drone shot, so that's what you'd be seeing. That's exactly the shot you'd be seeing when you're standing on the scenic wetland overlook. So it's just a beautiful area. The city owns this. It's wetland area that the city owns, which we just think is a great amenity, and that, of course, is where the pedestrian path will wind through as well. Next slide, please. So this is the plan. Looks a little fuzzy to me, but not wholesale changes from before, but I think a lot of good improvements. So just a couple that I could point out. I don't know if this will work here, but no, it's dead. Again, you can kind of see toward the top, that's where the emergency access would come in there. And again, that just creates a really, I think, usable pedestrian connection from the single-family area on the left to the attached single-family area to the right. And I think that'll be used quite a bit. That'll get people to that main corridor. And just kind of taking a step back, our whole premise on this was to start with the single-family as a buffer. It's zoned RT. We could put, I mean, we'd have to get approval, of course, but by right, we could put townhomes directly up against those single-family. We just didn't feel that that was right. And we really wanted to create a village concept. So that has been our driving force. It's why we're kind of situated in some respects with the way the site plan is drawn out. We like the way that creates these little village pockets, but still has it very cohesive. But I think it's important to note that we kind of started with how do we work with our neighbors and move forward there as far as screening some of the other externalities, which, by the way, that industrial area, I mean, it's, you can imagine the DPW yard, it's not a very, attractive area, but we're going to do our best to screen it internally as well, as you can see with all those pine trees that we place there. Next slide. This is just actually the other side of the entry wall and fence. So you would ask for some detail. I think before we told you that was I think we probably said a wooden fence or a vinyl fence. This is much more appropriate, obviously. It continues along with black aluminum with these columns, these masonry columns, which just really give it a stately look. Just what's not shown here is there will be a really nice shrubbery screen behind it. Just didn't get that detailed in here, but that'll be, that'll add pops of color for seasonality, and provide that kind of buffer and screen to the homes that will be behind it. But this was really just to kind of show you what that fence, what the materiality is of that fence. Next slide. I've already shown you this. I don't really need to go into it, just if there were people here that hadn't seen it before, but I think you all kind of know the plan. 20 single-family, 56 condos, and 70 townhomes. They are all owner-occupied. None of these are rentals, which is an important fact. And we have over 40% of the site as open space, which is something that we're very proud of. I'm not going to read all this. I've already read it all to you. But just a couple things. We got 6,000 lineal feet of sidewalk. 2,000 lineal feet is just for that trail, which is, again, the focal point of this project. We're cleaning up a blighted area. That's why you have 20 acres in Troy. The only reason why is because it's a difficult site to deal with, which is how we've kind of site planned the area as well. And the last one really important, we're, highly respected builder. Just kidding. I think that's it. Move on. I just threw this in again, just to remind everybody, we are right adjacent to neighborhood node. We are mostly zoned RT, which allows 8 units per acre, actually less than that. We've got the Rochester Special Area Plan. We've got industrial zone property. This is a transitional piece, and we really try to, live within our externalities as much as possible. So hopefully you all agree as well. Next slide. I want to just point this out, just from it's hard to see from just the site plan, but that really shows that main spine and how it's connected to all the green space areas, which is what we were obviously shooting for. Obviously, you've got the spur to the left that I mentioned before. There's also connection to the east to Rochester Road, so that's going to be a sidewalk you're going to put in and connect all the way over. So I'm sure that'll get a lot of use as well to the commercial along Rochester Road. But the main focus is this widened pedestrian path that will connect for miles to your system. I mean, this will connect to the other dog park. So this is obviously a very important part of our project. Next slide. You've seen the elevations. We haven't changed anything here. So, single family top left is what we're building right now in Meadows. So that, certainly something that's tried and true, and I think would fit very well. We tried to keep a common theme throughout with all the different products to create that village feel. Next slide, please. I'd shown you this last time, just kind of show the product design in different pods, as you will. Next slide. This is the entry level, the Aspen, which is the one-car garage with the Zoom room downstairs, what we call it. But this is really kind of the the entry price point, if you will, because we do see this as a village. We see this as different price points as for options for Troy residents, and frankly, just with interest rates the way they are, with construction costs the way they are, which hopefully construction costs will come down a little bit, but nonetheless, it is, majority of your residents have a very hard time buying a new single-family home. You have a lot of detached single-family homes, and we're trying to provide, options for those buyers that we know, obviously, from experience are there. Next slide, please. This is just the larger two-car. It's about 1,600 square foot, 2 and 3 bedroom options. And these are the attached single family. It's a new product we have not built here in Troy, but this is really a single family home. They're attached. You get about 1,850 square foot, kind of your starter, single family home, if you will, and really has everything a family would need. Next slide. This is the Raleigh. Again, this is what we're building in Meadows of Troy. We know that that's going to be successful here. So the single-family homes, single-family lots, buyer could select, to build this product. And then the next couple of slides are our single-family, which is a new product series for us, which we have had a lot of success with down in the Plymouth market. So I think that's all I have. I went quickly, but again, I just wanted to really concentrate on the things that we feel have changed. We, from what we've heard from you, went back to the minutes, tried to get make sure we really focus on those things. And again, I think it's the fine tuning, the fine detail that we really wanted to come back with for you. So I'm happy to answer your questions.
Any questions? Yes, Ms. Malala Holly.
Thank you for that all year-round usage that you have thought about for that common area. I'm more liking this new change in plan, to be very honest. Thanks also to include the architectural element, the community garden, and of course the entryway. You had a huge it's not exactly a sculpture, but you have some plants.
Yes,
in a huge planter-like setting. That's nice. That really is. I know Mr. Krent was talking about a architecture piece there to kind of making it into a very welcoming statement for this, and I think that looks beautiful.
Thank you.
Refresh my memory, because I know we've talked about this before too, but refresh my memory on 2 things only. The first is, what part of this entire project is going to be phase 1?
We haven't necessarily thought about phasing. It's probably too large. We'd probably split each of the areas off into different phases, but I don't know if we focused on the exact areas that would be phased. Now, having the multiple products, we could maybe even do it all in one phase since there are multiple products, but I'd assume we'd probably split each one into half.
I see. Okay. And my last question. Yes. Did we talk about this? Again, refresh my memory. We were going to have 3 different homeowners association?
No, there'd be one master association. We would have to have sub-associations just because the single-family, residents, they're not going to have the same level of needs as the townhomes, but there would be a master that would be responsible for all the common areas, and then each sub would have its own different due structure.
Yeah, I would anticipate the apartments will not have any. They will have snow removal service, let's say, but the single-family homes, they may be taking care of the yards themselves.
Exactly. That is correct.
That's where I was thinking. I know we talked about ranches being something that our Troy residents really want to see.
Yes, sure do.
I don't know whether we talked about how many of these proposed single-family homes will be ranches, or how many are you considering can become ranches if we were to see more need for it?
So obviously, we've got the Meadows of Troy site that is all ranches. So we feel there's opportunities for those buyers to buy those. We wanted to include that product because you're right. I think there is a need, and I think people will use them. If it's any indication, and I don't like talking about other communities when I'm in a planning commission, but I think it's relevant. Down in Plymouth, we have that same product line with a single family. We have the ranch. I'd say a third of them, maybe a quarter of them are the ranch. So we want it to be organic. We don't want to dictate. There's only 20 single family homes, so we want to be able to open that up for the buyers. But if we had 20 buyers, day one say we want ranches, we're building 20 ranches. So that's sort of what our mindset is.
Thank you. That is music to my ears.
Oh yeah, certainly.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Krant.
Just to refresh my memory on the location of that aluminum and masonry fence. Where's that on the?
So that is on the along Long Lake. Yep, that whole area would be that fencing. Yes.
Any other questions? Oh, Mr. Rahman.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to us.
Yes,
and thank you for adding that fencing and then all the shrubs or the plants that, the trees that you're going to plant and the density. So definitely it would look very nice.
Yes, thank you.
So I appreciate that. Now this is a PUD, and I know that we probably didn't talk about it. And you just maybe talk a little bit about energy efficiency or sustainability from Robertson Brothers. Do you plan anything, or do you think that can be used so that we can be more efficient from energy standpoint?
From energy,
from overall,
So what we concentrate. Obviously, we in some communities are pushing the envelope. So we're learning a lot as we're going along. But we meet and exceed obviously the building codes. We take it very seriously. We do provide a EV charging capability in every single garage that we build. We've been doing that. Actually, I think we started in Troy, or maybe, I think we started that in Troy. And then we're also proposing some EV charging stations, which I don't know where they are exactly on that, but we propose them in some of the guest spaces as well. So I don't have the exact notes. We use Energy Star appliances, to a great deal, and just making sure that we're building a tighter house than what's required by code.
Well, yeah, that's basically the point is because the codes probably needs to be changed also, right? Because the technology is changing. But it's not changed yet. So are you willing to adjust to those? Because it's going to take multiple years, right, to finish this?
Yeah, we actually had a conversation about that today. As the building code, evolves, we certainly would meet what the minimum codes are at the time, of course.
Yeah, I'm just looking for the openness so that you can, go with the flow, because these things are changing. So thank you so much.
I forgot to introduce Darren Newbecker from our office.
Sorry. To that question, we design all of our houses, and we actually qualify for the energy efficiency tax credit. So every one of these houses in here, assuming we meet the new standard, which is rolling out, which I think we will qualify, which is far above code. So our average house is, we've tested it out, and it's different for product types. So there's about a 15% cost savings annually, which doesn't go to us, it goes to the homeowners because of the insulation requirements, whether it's a 2x6 wall or a 2x4 wall. So we work with DR Nelson, who does all of our modeling and energy efficiency studies. So I hope that answers
Thank you so much. Yes, definitely did. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Tagle.
Rochester Road entrance.
Yes.
We haven't spoken much about that. What does that entrance look like? I know you don't have a graphic of it, but can you verbally tell us what is there going to be any tie-in to the Long Lake Road entrance? So there's kind of a synergy between this development
Yeah, that's a good question. I wish that blinking sign wasn't there. There's a video sign there. So we are proposing to upgrade it quite a bit. Right now, there's really nothing. If you can see from the site plan, we are proposing, and in the landscape plan, there was a monument sign there. So we would kind of match the same logo and feel and design with a monument sign in that there is an existing pork chop, I guess, median. So we would be expanding that and adding in a few trees, as you can see from the site plan, and then as you come down, those trees don't exist right now. We're putting those trees in. That whole area actually is part of an easement with the property owners to the north. It's a joint access easement. So we've been working with them because there's, we're going to have to change the grade of that a little bit. So we've had a lot of conversations with them, and they're fine with us beautifying it. So I think that's a good question. I haven't focused on that. In some ways, it's a little bit of our back door, but I do want to say that we have consciously, looked to beautify that median, and that, you can see as the trees come in. And that all would be maintained by our HOA. So it's, we'll be up to the same standards as the rest of the community.
I have one more. Building products, exterior building products.
Yes.
I'm not a huge proponent of vinyl siding. You may recall that from our last meeting.
I do recall that.
I think, as I looked at your elevations, I think one of the things that I guess I would like to see considered is that the board and batten system be used more and less of the lap siding. I think the lap siding, to me, is such a common element in so many developments, single-family developments. And I think the board and batten adds a little bit more character, even though it's a vinyl product. I do applaud you for keeping the vinyl, I don't know, what is it, maybe 8 feet above. It's not coming down where I'm looking right at it.
Right.
But I really would suggest that you consider maybe replacing large areas that you have of the horizontal lap siding with the board and batten product. Now, that would be my recommendation. And I know you've got some massing issues if you wanted to change in some areas to keep the lap siding. But I think the board and batten is a more attractive product.
Okay. And I think we can, and we'll certainly look into that, because I knew that obviously was something that you'd be interested in. We could kind of add some brick as well, elements up and down, so some of those flat areas. So we've certainly done that, and I'll certainly bring that to our team, and we can move forward with that. I agree.
Any other questions for the applicant? Yes.
If there's no one else, I would ask the board to engage Mr. Loughran in a slightly more robust conversation about phasing. This is a negotiated process, and I know that one of the concerns the city will have is respect to phasing. I know you said that you haven't really given it much thought, but I'll point out that in the PUD agreement, one paragraph says that the project will be done in 2 or more phases. That's in paragraph 1, and then in paragraph 6, it says it will be done in 1 phase. So I would ask this board to engage in that conversation with Mr. Loughran and see, because I have a feeling that'll come up at council. And I have one other point, but if you want to start with that one.
Okay. Would you be able to elaborate on the conflict between the 2 paragraphs there with the phasing?
Yeah, it's a draft. I mean, that's basically it. Did you want to speak to it or no? I thought you were saying something.
Well, I was.
Make sure you sign in too, so that our
yeah,
secretary has that. So.
Absolutely. Darian Newbecker, 6905 Telegraph. And I'll sign it. But the phasing comment, there will be a phasing component. We have not identified exactly how that's going to work, but I suspect we're going to be putting in the main road from Rochester all the way through to Long Lake, which will bring in all the single family. Does this pointer work? Does this work? Oh, perfect. I suspect you'll bring this entire road in here. In fact, I know we'll bring this entire road because you'll make us with 2 points of access. I suspect we will bring a phase line and probably terminate right here. So we pick up half of these 2-story townhouses, all the single family, and we'll probably phase these townhouses in here and pick up a section. So my suspicion it'll be 2 phases. We'd have to verify that, but the amenity will go in phase 1. All of the main roads will go in phase 1. The vast majority of the site's going to go in phase 1, but we probably will stop here. It doesn't make sense to bring that much land development on all at once. And you want to be judicious with what you do. So, and I hope that's acceptable. I think we've done that in other communities.
Well, I'm fine with whatever, but it's going to be whatever this board's going to recommend to council, and I know, I don't know. I suspect that council, you'll have this conversation with council whenever it comes before that, city council. So you may want to have that more fleshed out based on any recommendation that this body is going to have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Darian had mentioned, the road going in. I mean, we would also obviously do all the mass grading and have that. It's just really the extension of any water and sewer and road that we'll make sure we put into the PUD.
And then
You
my
have another
second
one?
point, I did have a second point. It hasn't come up tonight, but the regional detention pond, there'll be changes that I have to make to that agreement. I think you're aware from your conversation with Mr. Bovensee. The PUD agreement talks about the city constructing and expeditiously, and my understanding is, and just so this board understands, Robertson is actually going to be building the regional detention pond, and then you'll be having private agreements with the other developers who are going to
Yes, that's what we proposed to city engineering. So yes, we're comfortable with that.
Okay, I didn't know if, because we talked about that a lot at our last meeting, so I didn't know if anybody had any questions about that Mr. Lawford could answer. If not, I will be making those changes and get those to your attorney.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking that question. Actually, it was one of the ones I had written down to ask about. It's for more information, but thank you for asking that. Any other questions from members of the commission? Mr.
I just
Tagle.
want to confirm that regional detention will be Phase 1 work
Yes, of course.
for the entire site.
Yes. Yeah, we'd have to put that in for sure.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I guess thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Keeping it brief but informative.
Tried.
At this point, we've already had a public hearing on this the last time it came in front of the commission, but if there's anyone from the public that would like to address us at this time on the proposal, and seeing none, we'll have Mr. Deering come up and answer all of our complicated questions. I've got one for you here, so a couple actually, so. I did want to mention one thing, too, about the Rochester Road entrance that I'm glad Mr. Tagle brought that up. I think the city is in the process of doing some preliminary engineering and surveying work for that to be boulevarded. So in the long run, that may be your more important entrance into your development than the one off of Long Lake. Because a lot of people dislike going down Long Lake at rush hour, especially if they're going eastbound. So, Mr. Deering.
Good evening. My name is Steve Deering. I'm with OHM Advisors, and I'm their senior traffic engineer. I don't have any formal presentation to make. You've hit on some of the important issues, though. There is the imminent widening and expansion of Rochester Road, taking the boulevard that currently ends to the south and extending it through the Long Lake intersection. The current access that they have is not quite full access. The only movement not allowed is exiting left turns. But with the boulevard, it'll be turning in basically into right in, right out, subject to wherever the crossover might be. It might be located opposite the street, which means they'd have a direct left in. Otherwise, it's pass by, U-turn, the usual thing that we all know about when it comes to Michigan boulevards. And regarding their Long Lake entrance, it's really close to the end of that median for that part of the boulevard. So we've been working with their engineers and with the road commission to ensure that there's an adequate taper to have westbound traffic that wants to turn left into the site be able to access the left turn lane so that they're out of the way of through traffic. So the major traffic concerns are going to be addressed by the city's project with Rochester and what they're going to be doing anyway on Long Lake. And then the rest of our time and attention has just been on the neighborhood safety issues associated with the layout. So other than that, whatever questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Deering? I just had a couple of them. One was there's a memo from you to I think Scott Finley on page 387 of the packet that talks about, and I don't know if this has been incorporated into the plans or not, but you mentioned in your report, site access, the proposed curb radii must be clearly dimensioned at the new roads proposed curb return radii must be at least 30-foot minimum radius. Has that been addressed, or?
Yeah, that's basically up at Long Lake.
Okay.
That's a road commission detail associated with any street accessing one of their highways.
And in the same memo, you talk about fire department approval for not providing T turnarounds at the end of each aisle in the multifamily townhome area. Do you know if that's been resolved, or is that something that will be resolved?
I do not know if it's been resolved. My understanding is that, well, what we're talking about are those portions, the development that run north-south with the branching for the multifamily units. If you get, for example, a delivery truck or something like that, they get to the bitter end, there's no easy way for them to turn around. And what would normally be done is you provide a T turnaround or some other dedicated space to make sure that a vehicle can make that maneuver. These are really short dead ends. It's not really that onerous if you really have to back a vehicle up, although it's never really desirable. And so just for the day-to-day use of the development, I don't think it's a big deal. But we try to be sensitive to fire equipment having to back up. And so I wanted the fire marshal and the fire department to decide if that was acceptable to them or not. I don't know if that's been resolved yet.
All right, great. Thank you. Any more questions for Mr. Deering? Yes, Mr. Krent.
One quick thought on the, there's that major curved section, sort of like at the intersection of the access from Rochester and the access from Long Lake, that curve. If you're coming south from Long Lake and a fire truck wants to turn right, that's kind of about 120-degree angle turn. Is that, obviously it's going to be sufficient. Somebody did the drawings for that to make sure, because that's a tight, that's a bit of a tight turn. I'm just wondering if that was addressed.
We have a computer-aided drafting tool to look at that issue. It's called Auto Turn, and you can put literally a fire truck template on it and drive a truck through there. And they have to go left of center. They have to kind of use the whole. They have to use the whole street, but they can make the turn.
Good. I could see if they use the whole street, it would work. Yep. Thanks.
Any more questions? Yes, Ms. Malala.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we talked about this last time, but I just wanted to refresh my memory on this. Traveling west on Long Lake Road, people really drive fast on Long Lake Road. So if somebody's coming on Long Lake Road traveling west, will they get a designated left, will they get a center turning lane into this property? Is
yes,
that?
Yes.
Okay.
If you think about the way, I wish their graphic showed more of Long Lake. There's the median.
Yes.
And what had been a divided roadway is in the process of coming back down to 5 lanes, which would include a center left. But at the end of that physically raised median, there's rumble strips that had been built when that boulevarded road was created. And what their plan will do is they won't completely eliminate the rumble strips, but it'll kind of cut it back so it'll be relatively easy for westbound to move into that center lane and still have enough room to decelerate and then store until they can wait for oncoming traffic to clear before they can make their left turn into their development. So it's a rather modest change to the existing conditions. Again, just getting rid of some of the rumble strips so that drivers are not inhibited in getting out of the way of through traffic.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Deering? Seeing none, thank you for coming. All right, bring it back to the hands of the commission for either a resolution or any further questions. There's a lengthy resolution already prepared by city staff if somebody wants to take a shot at making the motion.
I'll take a shot at this.
Mr. Faison?
Whereas the applicant, Robertson Brothers Homes, seeks conceptual development plan, CDP, and preliminary development plan, PDP, approval for the Village of Troy Planned Unit Development, PUD, located on the south side of Long Lake, west of Rochester, in Section 15, approximately 20.48 acres in area, and whereas the Village of Troy PUD features 20 detached single-family homes, 56 attached single-family homes, 2 stories, and 70 attached townhomes, 3 stories, and whereas the PUD provides a walkable urban environment that is compact, designed to human scale, and exhibits contextual integration of buildings and city spaces, and whereas the PUD provides a compatible mix of open space, landscaped areas, and pedestrian amenities, including incorporation of a regional trailway system, and whereas the PUD proposes appropriate land use transitions between the PUD and surrounding properties, and whereas the PUD will reasonably mitigate impacts to the transportation system and enhance non-motorized facilities and amenities. Whereas the PUD provides a complementary variety of housing types, and be it resolved that the Planning Commission recommends to City Council that concept development plan approval and preliminary development plan approval for the proposed Village of Troy be granted.
Before I get a second, I want to make sure Ms. Dufresne is satisfied with, we included everything in there we need to include.
Yeah, I'm satisfied. This is
Okay.
just a recommendation. The only thing I wanted to point out is if you wanted to address the T turnaround, because Mr. Deering wasn't sure that the fire department had addressed it. That's just a minor point.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Malala.
Just a clarification about the phasing of this project. That is not something that we need to think about.
I think based upon the verbal responses by the applicants, I think we have some good guidance from the direction they wish to go on in the phasing. Unless the commission wants it included in the resolution, so. Right. Mr. Kren has seconded. Any discussion? I just wanted to mention, appreciate you working with the commission and with city staff to try to come up with a good plan. I can remember there was controversy about the site over 20 years ago when a developer wanted to put a shopping center in there, and the people in the neighborhoods were adamantly opposed to that. And so this is a good solution. I like the fact that there's some good public amenities, the extension of the Troy trails, and also the regional detention pond, which would make it a lot better for a lot of the residents in that area. So I appreciate your work with us, and so I'll vote in favor of it, obviously. So any further discussion? Ready for the vote?
Mr. Rahman?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Biegner?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Malala.
Yes.
Motion carries.
It's on to city council from here, so good luck there.
Thank you.
All right, we've deferred item number 9 to our next meeting, and so the next item on our agenda is approving the 2023 calendar. Hopefully, Ms. Zarnecki can get a copy of what that calendar is. So does anybody have any questions, or would somebody like to make a motion to approve the proposed calendar? Yes.
I just was concerned, is the March, I don't have the calendar in front of me, I apologize. There was a date in March. Does that coincide with the spring break at our schools? I just wanted to be cognizant of our residents' availability
know.
for,
Since my kids are out of school, I don't know that anymore, so. Who's got kids in school besides you, so.
that was my only thought that came to me today when I saw the March date there, but
Tried to forward it to you.
Well, we could probably go ahead and approve it at this time, and then if we find enough people are going to be missing of that, at that meeting, then we could either postpone it or set another date, so.
okay.
I don't think it's in the way of Troy schools.
Okay.
It's not? Okay.
I don't believe it is. I think it's just before that.
Okay.
Our meeting's April 11th, and the schools are usually out the week before that.
Okay. All right, would someone like to offer?
I
Mr.
went through it, I thought the
Okay.
dates made sense.
All right, Mr. Biegner moves to approve the calendar for 2023. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Faison seconds it. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
You have to give me a second. I
Oh.
heard my roll call.
We're too fast for you.
I'm so sorry. Okay. Mr. Biegner,
Yes.
Mr. Faison,
Yes.
Mr. Krent,
Yes.
Mr. Lambert.
Yes.
Ms. Malala-Holly,
Yes.
Mr. Rahman,
Yes.
Mr. Tagle.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next on the agenda, public comment for items on the agenda. Does anyone wish? Yes. Mr. Fox, come out forward, and if you have an item you'd like to speak on.
Well, I guess if it technically needs to be on an item, I'll have it be on the schedule that you guys just approved for next year. I figure this is better than trying to chase y'all down as you're trying to get out of here for the night. My name's Tyler Fox, and as of yesterday, I am going to be joining you guys on the Planning Commission for 2023. So I just want to take a chance, introduce myself, say hello to you all, and say that I am looking forward to serving on a commission that is as thoughtful as you guys are. I appreciate a lot of the decisions and conversations you guys had tonight, and I'm looking forward to being a part of them in the future. So, like I said, I figured this was better than waving y'all down, so I am all set. I look forward to working with y'all.
Congratulations. At your first formal meeting, we'll let you tell us a little bit about yourself, too. So.
Sounds good. There's really not a lot to tell.
Well, I'm sure there is. I'm sure there is. All right. You're the only person in the audience, so I assume we can close public comment. So now we'll go with Planning Commission comment. So usually start down here, but I'll start with Mr. Carlisle, and we'll work our way that way.
It's been a pleasure working with you this year, and I hope everyone has a happy holidays. And I hope I filled in adequately enough for Brent tonight, and we'll see him at hopefully in January, healthy and happy.
Thank you.
Yeah, healthy and happy. Nothing from me. Happy holidays.
I'm good. Merry Christmas to all.
Just want to say thank you, Sadak Rahman, for serving with us. Appreciate your input.
Thank you so much, and welcome. You know, I've been here for 4 years, and it's really a learning experience. You know, so I welcome you. And obviously, you know, the zoning board and planning commission gave me a lot of perspective of how city works. I'd like to start thanking from Mr. Arneki. I know how difficult your job is being a recording secretary, so thank you for all your help, and all the members. And then also, you know, our city, you know, the rent, really appreciate your help. And we'll be seeing each other some other places. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Faison?
Goodbye to Mr. Rahman. Welcome to Mr. Fox, and happy holidays to everybody. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Rahman, for serving on this commission, and welcome to Mr. Fox, and happy holidays to all of you.
Happy New Year.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you. The only thing I wanted to mention, just to reiterate what you've said, thank you, Mr. Rahman, for your service. There's plenty of other commissions and committees the city is always looking for people to serve on, so appreciate your service. And also congratulations to Ms. Parakis and Mr. Krent, who were also appointed last night along with Mr. Fox. So congratulations. And with that, enjoy your holidays and Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Hey, we did it before 10.
Yeah, I know.